Welcome. Once again, I'm going to be brief in describing a few functions in MuleESB and the Anypoint platform. Today we'll talk about the scatter gather that you could use to separate calls asynchronously for asynchronous processing side by side, not in parallel. This is a type of flow that is interesting to me. It has been around for a few versions of MuleESB now, but it's not very old. And it's one of the first real integrations I did with Mule 2 that I had to do without this. It was quite a different way to solve it. But let's not focus on that right now. What I'm going to use to show, to describe the scenario here, I have just fast put up 3 web services here that will just echo whatever I put into them. It's an HTTP inbound with different paths that accept post and get methods. There's a Groovy script with a sleep thread. One is on 2 seconds, one is on 3 seconds, and one is on 4 seconds. And it's just an echo component that will echo the payload back, if any. So I'll just start this to show you exactly what I mean by this. So, okay, it started another project too, never mind. This is the web service path, and you'll see a load indicator here once I hit enter. And there it's finished 2 seconds later. I'll show you the 4-second one, 2, 3, 4, 4. Yeah. So not useful web services at all, except for demonstrating what I'm about to do. So let's create a new project. Gather test. And I think start with a let's load a file here. Let's add a file to string transformer just to be able to read the content of it, and let's that's a logger, of course. So we will read the file. We can put the file content in a message property too, just to have the original content somewhere. There, we'll just add a message property called file content, and we'll use the payload for its content. Oops, it's a bit fast on the enter key. Payload, and I want a bracket before this, like that. So, and there we'll just put a logger to show you the flow. So what I'll do next is call one of these web services. Here we can just add a text before call 1, and then we'll configure this one. We'll just add a default connector. We will use the path vs1 and a post method, since we'll use our payload. And we need to go to advanced tab and add localhost and our port, like that. So of course we have to configure our file in directory, the path that is going to pull, like that. And let's add a file inbound filter here too. We just do it like file name wildcard filter with a pattern of anything.txt. So that's a very good start. Now we're going to do a new configuration that will load both these. We'll use the test web service and a gather test example. I'll click run and I'll kill the old instance and just wait for them to get started. And now I realize that there's no way to see when we are finished with this, so we'll just add another logger after first call, like that. Switch to the console, watch it redeploy itself, and then I will just take this example.txt and put in my in file directory. Oops. And it will consume it, and we see the log before call 1 and after first call, and we can see here that it was roughly a bit over 2 seconds between them. So let's imagine that we have a scenario here where you want to take the data from these files and post it to 3 different web services. So we'll just add the other calls here too. And we'll have a logger in between. And of course the other again. And in a real scenario, we would probably use a set payload in between here. But since we're just going to show this off, it doesn't really matter much. We'll use the connector. We'll call VS2 on this one via post. We'll switch to the advanced tab, localhost, and port 8888. Hit save there. And we will log after second call. And I'll just do the last one real quick here too. It's called Web Service 3. We shall post to this one and localhost. So there is our complete configuration. 3 web service calls, and it is already redeployed. If we once again copy this example file, watch it get consumed, and we can see the call going through here. Before first, after second, and then we didn't put the text in third, but we will see it here. So roughly at 14:42:12 we're completed, and it started around 02. So 10 seconds. 4 plus 3 plus 2 would be a bit less than 9 seconds, but there's other things in between that can add time. So this is very efficient, and if we're going to do a lot of these calls and probably would have a user at the other end waiting for a reply here, this isn't an optimal solution. So what can we do? Well, let's turn this flow off to begin with. Let's set the initial state to stopped, and we'll take a copy of this flow and call it gather test flow number 2. Not number 1, number 2. And this should of course not be stopped. We'll just save and switch to the message flow again. So what I want to do now is, after the first logger here, we'll put a gather. Oops. And we'll just put this in there first. Put the second, hard to hit the middle line. And of course, the third in between here too, like that. So we'll add the loggers after, just to get information about when each of them are completed. And we will add a last logger that says everything is finished. So this should probably work out of the box. The scatter gather is an internal flow control that takes the message entering, splits it into different the number of sub flows that is part of it. It takes the message, splits it, so each of these three parts, in this example you could use more, will get a copy of the message. And at the end, it will gather all the results into a list and output that. So we could add a logger here that describes the payload too. So we can just watch that. There. So let's kick this up again. Yeah, we just saved and it has redeployed itself. We'll copy the file, put it in the in-file directory, and we can see it hit here already before command, and you can see it went really fast between these, probably around a second for each. 33, 34, 35. So we can see before the first call we had 14, 45, 31, and after the last call we have 35, which means that the total amount of time for this is nearly equal to the slowest of the services that we call here, the 4-second one, instead of the sum of all of them. And we can also see the buffered input stream that was the final result of these. We'll not get deeper into that right now, since we have no interesting data at all to look at here. But we could easily just stop these, add a breakpoint there, and use a debug configuration with both these in. Just to show you real quick, we'll switch perspective and just check that we are deployed. Yes. And then we will copy the example file once more. See it get consumed, and there we hit our logger. And then we can expand the payload and see that we have all these three buffer input streams that each contain something, which let's see if we can dig this out. Is a memory manager. Yeah, well, not really that I can find our text, but I would assume that we should find the string from the input file somewhere. Well, that's everything about scatter gather right now. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.